my name's Stewart Whicker. I'm the head coach and program director at the Marconi Tennis and Squash Centre out in the western suburbs. Today, with my talk, I'm hoping that you're going to get some tools and some ideas on how to be the best you and move towards more of success of the things that you want to achieve. So I'm going to write down what I'm going to be going through. So, 2 seconds. So, actually I don't need the microphone, do I?
Oh. No, you do.
I do? Oh, okay.
And you need to use the green marker.
The green? I bought my own.
Oh, did you? Okay, sorry.
So the first thing we're going to talk about respect, value, and the power of clarity. Hopefully that's the second thing I'm going to talk about is, I wrote it down, is defiance. This one's a good one. Defiance. And which defiant are you? Number 3 is going to be the question why. Number 4, problems. And the last one I'm going to talk about is failure. So, okay, so a little bit more of my background. I've been a coach for over 30 years and I've worked with thousands of clients from little 3-year-olds right through to professional, to the level of professional tennis players that get to travel the world and have that type of lifestyle. It's not as good as what you think it might be. And I've learned so much, and some of the biggest lessons I've learned from the little kids, I've learned from the elite players, and I work with people with disabilities as well, and some of the biggest lessons I've learned with working with people with disabilities. They've taught me the biggest lessons. So respect, value, and the power of clarity. So we assign value to everything. We assign value to ourselves, to objects, to cars, to everything, to possessions. And I want you to give me some, I'm going to write it down, what are some of the things that we assign value to? So can someone give me a starting point? What do you assign value to? And we use respect, that's why I put respect there, we use respect or the lack of respect to assign value. So the more we respect something, the more value we give it. The less we respect it, the less value we give it. So who can give us an idea?
We value life.
We value life. What else do we value? Health. Ah, good. Now we're starting to get there. So health. What else do we value? Relationships. Just yell them out. Any more?
Money.
Money. Yeah, we give value to money. Possessions. I'm not very good at spelling.
Hobbies.
I beg your pardon?
Hobbies, like what you're interested in.
Hobbies.
Career.
Careers.
Family and friends.
Great. I'm glad.
Relationships.
Family. Friends. Now we're talking about value. We also give value, so we give a high value to our family and friends. We give low value to other people as well. So who's somebody that we might, I'll give you one, I don't want anyone to yell out. The guy that bips us in the car park. Okay, do we give him do we have a lot of respect for that person, or do we have less respect? So our value for that guy that bipped us in the car park, we don't rate him very highly. So we also give value to people that we don't like. Okay?
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
yeah, so we assign value. So we're going to, people we don't like. Excuse my terrible writing. We also give value to consequences. So I'm going to do a little experiment. Would you like to see a little experiment? I think I might get Bridget to come up as part of my experiment. And we're going to prove how we give value and actually how our nervous system is affected by value. So let's try this little experiment. Okay. So I went to the $2 shop and I bought these bars. It's a $2 bars. And I'm going to throw it to Bridget. Okay, it's only a $2 bars. Okay? And I just want you to catch it.
Okay.
Alright, here we go. Okay, how'd you feel?
I felt great. I felt like, oh, I'm glad that I've got tennis training soon.
So you weren't that. See, our nervous system.
But I did feel nervous.
Yes, well, our nervous system is affected by the value that we give things. Okay, so $2 bars, and Bridget's nervousness was at this level. Now, I hope you don't mind, but I actually bought something. This is actually an heirloom from my family.
Oh my gosh.
Actually, my dad brought it back, brought it from England when he came out in 1950, and it's been in the family for 200 years.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
I've got to move things out of the
Come
way.
over here. Okay, so I'm going to throw it. Actually, it's no.
I want to minimize my journey.
Okay.
To lower my anxiety.
Okay. So do you see how straight away Bridget has assigned a new value to this? She has a bit more respect for it, and her nervous system is going through the roof. Okay. All right. Thank you for catching it because it's brutal. Actually, that came from the $2 shop. So I just wanted to do that little experiment to how we assign value and how the more value, Bridget, come back. We need to, and how the more value we give something, the more it affects our nervous system. And we're going to talk a little bit more about respect, value, and the power of clarity, because I think this really helps performance and achieving the goals that we want. So one more. Okay, one more experiment. Okay, now, this is an egg. It's a real egg. Okay, it's a real egg. Everyone see that one? Okay, it's a real egg. Okay, I hope those tennis skills are okay. Okay.
Oh my gosh, Stewart.
What?
I'm kind of wearing.
No, that's okay. You can do it. You can do it. Hands out. Actually, let's get someone else. I think Bridget is a little bit more overwhelmed. Okay. Very good. Yes. All right, this is a rubber egg. Right. But it's our perceived value that we give things value, and it affects us differently.
It's a good trick, Stu.
Well, I mentioned at the I didn't write it. So we give value to consequences. So see how Bridget was like, this is a dress. So she's given a higher value of the consequences of what might happen. And this affects our nervous system really, really. It stops us from doing things.
I just want to catch it.
It stops us from wanting to do things. Okay, so one of the biggest things is that we give value to consequences. Sequences. There, I did it. You think that's right?
Yeah.
All right. So who gives us value? Who assigns our value?
God.
God assigns our value. On an earthly plane, who assigns our value?
Ourselves.
We give ourselves value.
Our experiences.
Our experiences, our family and friends give us value. And when I was, so I run a tennis centre. When I was going to take on the lease of a tennis centre, my late mother said to me, "Why do you want to take on a tennis centre? It's going to rain all the time. She's probably right at the moment, but over 20 years, the average of rain that affected the business has been about 4%. But my mother said to me, you know, it's going to rain. She wanted to protect me. So in trying to protect me, why was she trying to discourage me? Why was she trying to discourage me from taking on the tennis centre?
Fear of failure?
Fear of failure. She didn't want to see me fail. So our family and friends, it was her nervousness of me failing that tried to protect me. So our family and friends kind of keep us down, and this is where the empowerment comes into it. So the power of empowerment, when you're empowered, you have clarity. And society doesn't want you to be empowered because it wants you to respect everything else, all of these things first, except ourselves. We're the last people to be respected. And we need to put ourselves at the top. So ourselves, when we put ourselves and have a high value of ourselves, that's when we become the most successful. And respect, society wants us to respect everything else first, then ourselves. I believe, from all my experiences, is that when we put ourselves first, with respect, having the highest respect, that's when we are the most successful. People that have high respect for themselves are the most successful people. So, yeah, I remember a student came to me, one of the best students that I ever worked with, and we went from a beginner right through to a professional. The biggest thing that he struggled with was his value of himself. You know, we would go to a tournament, he would lose, and the mum would say, why did you go all that way to lose in the tournament? First round of a tournament or the second round of a tournament. And that would lower his value. So the way he saw himself was low. So his success was stagnated because of the way he saw himself. So one of the things I did, I made a big banners at the back of our tennis centre that had the silhouettes of him hitting a ball. So when he walked into the centre, he was able to see himself in big. And that helped him have more value for himself. So it's very important that we understand that we need to value ourselves, have respect for ourselves first. But there's thing, I want everyone to think about success. What does success comes in many forms. So think about, what does success look like for you? So thinking into the future, you know, not holding a trophy over your head, but it might be in relationships, it might be health, it might be money, it could be anything. Success means so many different things to so many different people.
Steve, can I just say something about the thing of putting ourselves first? Sometimes I think also as Catholics we're kind of like, that just sounds wrong, but
no,
in
well,
respecting ourselves...
God first.
No, but in terms of putting ourselves first, but we should be thinking about everyone else. But when we respect ourselves, it's only then that we're able to respect other people properly.
Well,
if we don't respect ourselves, we won't be respecting others either.
Yeah, that's true.
Women especially struggle with that.
Yeah.
having the value
Putting
that you
ourselves,
assign.
investing in ourselves, putting ourselves first, and understanding that we can't do everything else unless we're okay, unless we've valued ourselves enough to do that.
Until you have a healthy relationship with yourself, you don't have a healthy relationship with others.
100%, and that the perception of our own value is conditioned into us from a very young age. Like my mum, being told to, don't do this, don't do that. They're protecting you. I think the statistics in careers is about 80% of people follow the career paths of their parents because their parents know what's safe for them.
Yeah.
So they guide they guide their kids into that career path because that's safe for them. So our brains, from research and stuff that I've done, our brains have two primary goals. One is survival. That's why when we get close to the edge of a cliff, we step back because our brain wants to keep us alive. And the other one is rewards, and rewards is really interesting. My son's 14, and when he was in primary school, every day they'll have the assembly, and they'll be handing out awards every day, and I thought that's really weird. And then on Thursday they'll have half an hour of giving out awards, principals awards, like that. And it comes back to that conditioning thing that society does to us, is that it wants to wants you to respect everything else first, except ourselves. And I think it has to start with having the respect for ourselves first, and believe it or not, respecting the guy that beats the horn, because they're giving us an opportunity to react a certain way. We can react, and that leads me into my second thing, defiance. All right, so respect, just going back over respect, value, and the power of clarity. The more respect we have for ourselves, the more empowered we are, and that scares people. That scares people because empowered people take risks within reason. We're not talking about taking silly risks, but business risk. Being here today, putting on this event is risky, and that's scary for the people around us because it's a risk, and people like the status quo. And so congratulations to Bridget on putting this on, because that is very empowering.
Yeah.
And that deserves an applause. So I ask people to think about seeing yourself as successful. Now remember that the more we showed with the egg and with the $2 bars and the priceless bars that I had, is that we assign value, and we get nervous the more we assign value. So isn't it interesting that I'm asking you to see yourselves as incredibly valuable? You're golden. Your value is infinite. But yet, when I talked about value, the more value we assign something, the more nervous we get. So we end up self-sabotaging ourselves. When we see ourselves successful, we end up self-sabotaging because we start to look at the consequences of that success. What are some of the failures that might come with it? And the value, that's a high value person that has the success. For you, in the future, when you have all your hopes and dreams, it's because you highly value yourself. And that thinking about that can make you very nervous, just like trying to catch an egg. So how do we overcome that nervousness? Well, then you need to practice it every day. Conditioning. We're conditioned every day from when we're younger to have I know it sounds terrible, but to have a lower value of ourselves, because society and everybody wants us to respect everything else first. So I'll move on to defiance. So defiance is, it's actually innately human to be defiant. When I was younger, I was told, so I'm one of 6, I'm the youngest, and I was told, sit there, be quiet, don't do anything, just, you stay out of the corner, and, don't talk. And so out of defiance, don't be defiant. That was some of the things that I heard when I was younger. Don't talk back. I mean, I was probably getting in trouble there. But there's 2 types of defiance. There's yes?
I remember my dad was saying when he was young, children should be seen and not heard.
Right. So there's 2 types of defiance. There's constructive defiance and there's destructive defiance.
Yeah.
So my mum said, don't touch the hot stove. So I touched the hot stove. So that would be considered destructive defiance.
Yeah.
So Richard Branson, have you ever heard of Richard Branson? He was told when he was younger that you'll either become a millionaire or you'll end up in the gutter. And out of his defiance, his constructive defiance, he built an empire. So defiance is probably one of the most powerful emotions that we can have. It's built empires and it's destroyed empires. But it depends on which defiant are you. So I think we all know probably some destructive defiance in our life. And we also know some constructive defiance. So destructive is destroying things in their defiance, and constructive is building things, making things better for yourself and the people around you. So I think defiance, figuring out which defiant are you is really important. When I was younger, we went to a tennis centre, and being the youngest, I was told to sit there and just watch. And I said to myself, I'm going to be better than all of you one day. And, you know, 30 years later, I had my own tennis academy and, you know, ended up being the best tennis. That was a constructive defiance. You know, I have a brother that's 14 months older than me, and he's a very destructive defiant. And, you know, his relationships, he doesn't get to see his kids. He has, you know, out of his destructive defiance, he destroys everything. And part of being a constructive defiant is taking responsibility and having respect for yourself. So I'll move on to, so the question for you guys is, what type of defiant are you? Are you a constructive defiant, or are you a destructive defiant? Constructive and destructive. So that's really important. Why? I think this is a really good question. And it's, when we fail, our brain needs a why. It needs to know why things happen. And in the absence of the truth of why something happens, our brains make it up. So, excuses. Has anyone ever made an excuse? Okay. We make excuses all the time. Excuses, I believe, are designed to make us feel better. But it doesn't look at the truth or the reality behind something. So, yeah, when I have people come and things are not going the way they want them to go, and they don't really understand what's happening, whether it's biologically or physically what's happening, they make it up. And some of the things that they come up with is, I'm hopeless, I can't do this. And what they're doing is that their brain is trying to come up with a why. So in the absence of the truth, we make things up. And what we want to do is we want to get closer to the truth. So I think in the booklet, I'll come back to the little exercise that Bridget had in there for me. So that's a really good, interesting thing to think about is when things, actually, a few things happen. Poor Monica hit her head this morning. And we'll call that a fail. Like that's not something that you really wanted. We fail all the time. And that's going to be the last thing. That's, so I met Monica this morning, and she had this big gash on her head, and I felt terrible for her. So we need to understand the truth behind why things happen. And we want to, if we find ourselves making excuses, we're not looking at the reality of the situation. So nothing's going to really improve. So we've got to get away from making excuses and try to seek out the truth behind the why. And you might need Bridget or Monica or Bernie to help us understand the whys of why things are happening. Really important. Problems. I like this one. In tennis, Bridget would agree with this. Bridget, tennis is a problem-solving game. Well, our brains are also designed to solve problems. This is one's really good. I think this one will help people a lot. We all have problems. We can let problems happen to us, or we can design our own problems. In the absence of creating our own problems, our subconscious brain will make problems for us. We'll attract problems because we need to solve problems. Problems, some of the problems that we have from day to day is, what are we going to have for dinner tonight? Am I going to have a warm place to sleep? I'm going to have a roof over my head. These are all problems. I think we've pretty much solved those problems. But we also have other problems that pop up. And these problems kind of come about because we don't create our own positive. When I talk about problems, we want to have positive problems. We want to have good problems. So what we did at my house is I said to my wife, I said, okay, what good problem could we have? So going back 10 years, the problem that I want to renovate the bathroom. Want to, do this, this and this. So this was a problem. So I made on the whiteboard, we put pictures of what the new bathroom would look like, and that was my problem to solve, because our brains want to solve problems. And in the absence of having problems to solve, problems, we attract problems, negative problems that we don't want. And then we become reactive to those problems, and it can become self-fulfilling. So problems, think about the problems that you've got and start designing problems that you want. That's a really good thing, because then your brain will just go to work and to solve those problems. But do what we did. We put that problem front and centre. One of the major problems that we wanted to do a couple of years ago was knock down our old house and build a new house, build the house. Actually, the problem that we wanted was my wife wanted an ensuite, and we only had one toilet in the old house, 3-bedroom, 1 toilet. And my wife for 20 years has wanted an ensuite. So I went, okay, we need an ensuite. It's a problem. Well, the problem was that it was going to cost $130,000 to put a master bedroom on the end, and it would still be the old house. So we said, okay, let's make a bigger problem. Let's knock down the old house, figure out how to get the finances, and put the house that we want with the ensuite. And we got the keys about 6 months ago, and we've been in the house for 6 months. So we created the problem, and then we worked towards solving that problem. Whereas I mentioned my brother before, and in his destructive defiance, problems happen to him, and he's always reacting to those problems, and they're negative problems, and they're not healthy at all. So, it would be great for him to start to be a constructive defiant, start creating his own problems. That would be fantastic for him. And the last one I want to talk about, I'm very nervous. I was very nervous today because I don't get to stand in front of so many people. I did have a couple of things, actually. Where was my bits of paper that was down? So I did have a couple of props. So that was my why. Our brain needs a why. And the other thing that I had that I printed up was, which defiant are you? I've lost my blue tape. I put it upside down. Which defiant are you? I like that picture, as a kid. All right. So which defiant are you? Be a constructive defiant. I remember years ago I was talking to a young girl and the mother, and I said, I was talking about defiance, and the mother didn't want the kid to be defiant. And I said to the mum, the worst thing you can do to your kid is tell them not to be defiant. But I said the best thing you can do is teach them which defiant to be. A constructive defiant that builds things and helps people and helps themselves. Because it's in our DNA to be defiant. Just like that little kid that touched the stove. I'm sure everyone's been told not to do something or do this, and out of your own defiance, you kind of gone off and did it anyway. Or maybe when you were younger, you were told you couldn't go to that party, and you're still kind of out of your defiance, jumped out the window, and I don't know. All right, so the last one is failure, and I've mentioned about Monica and the cut on the head, and put your hand up if you failed today. Put your hand up if... Now, failure could be anything. It could be the smallest thing. Earlier, Bridget we started to talk, and the video played, and it was it was a small fail. We fail all the time. So let's put your hand up if you've failed today. Have you had any small fails? Have you tripped over your own feet?